And we are live. I got
That's what
Brian
my
Summer.
that's what my computer says too, John.
Yeah, we're live. I just got distracted because I don't like the recording settings that I have in place for this show, but that's okay. It's not a concern. We're going to roll with it. Brian, we got a packed show today. We got to hit our whiffs and our picks, but we also got a sparkling special guest. I'm afraid to butcher the last name, but she's
Achille.
coming.
Gene
Achille.
Achille.
I'm
Yep.
glad I did not try to pronounce it, but now that you did, it sounds bloody obvious. So what was I thinking? Before we get into our set agenda and your dazzling slide deck, I want to take a moment to preempt the show with a quick, salty, roasty tribute to departing pesky questions specialist Doug Henschen of Constellation, who announced that he is shifting gears in our industry. He's still going to be active in certain ways, but he will not be at events, and he's also going to spend more time on hobby pursuits, including authoring about sailboats, which he knows quite a lot about, so he's already published an article. So, Doug, we're wishing you well, but Brian, this is the absence of one more pesky questions type of person where when you look over, you're like, oh, Doug's asking a question. This is probably going to be pretty good. So, Doug, thanks for keeping it salty all these years. We're going to miss you making vendors a little bit squirmy when you ask them about tough questions about their data architecture and what they're getting wrong.
Yeah, I made a little note on his announcement on LinkedIn about how I'm going to miss him at all those Vegas events we'd hit. And I'll miss him a lot more than I miss those awful flat meat sandwiches in the box lunches they try and feed us in the press room at those shows, particularly since I know some of those box lunches were probably prepared back in the pre-cloud era. But anyway, Doug had always had great questions. And yes, Doug is definitely a Salem kind of guy.
Yeah, and you came to really appreciate like the value when you get in a room of quote unquote analysts and someone knows their territory inside and out, right? And Doug knew everything going on with every single data and analytics vendor, and he knew their strengths and weaknesses in a very deep way. And, anyway, you really got to look forward to that moment. And my first meeting with Doug was not so lovely because we were in some weird tent on the SAP show floor. This must have been like 17 years ago or something. He's writing for Information Week. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? He was like, he came in late and then he just took over the entire conversation. And I was like, but I realized he was trying to file a story. So that's he was in reporter mode at that point in time in his career. And reporters can be pretty aggressive on deadline and stuff. But after that, I was like, I don't want to see Doug anymore. And then the next time I saw Doug, he asked this brilliant question. I was like, maybe I should rethink this guy. And ever since then, it's been like looking forward to seeing him. And Brian, we're going to need to start cultivating the next generation of salty, pesky question specialists because when we lose one, we need to replace him. So hopefully someone watching this is going to be like, I got to try to fill those shoes. So hopefully they will. Doug, wishing you the best and looking forward to your continued missives from wherever you will be located, whether it's on boat or on shore.
Yeah, I can't even remember what this exact setting was, but there was some event I was at, and Doug started in on an issue with a vendor, and I remember the two of us were going back and forth like dueling questions. I mean, we had those poor executives just tiptoeing and dancing, and at the end of it all, I knew Doug was probably going to have a way better story because he's so fast at typing up, what happened at an event. I always need a day or two to just kind of think about what really happened there. But anyway, I like Doug. I'll be the first one to admit that. And the events will be duller as a result of his absence. So just promise us one thing, Doug, don't fall overboard and drown. I mean, you worked too hard to get this time off and enjoy it.
Indeed. We'll have to send you a official show life preserver for continued protection against vendor marketing and boating accidents. And by the way, if you're inspired by this conversation, take a closer look at Doug's work. Definitely follow him on LinkedIn because he intends to keep publishing. He's just going to not be doing the travel part. So he'll just be pesky from further distance. Anyway, with that said, we are on, Brian. We don't have a lot of time before our HR tech guru, Maven, BS detector specialist is going to be on. So we got to move on this thing. So let me get the slides going if I can actually find them on the screen. Where are my slides? Oh, I got to put them back on, I guess. All right, here we go. Just one sec. Where are the slides? There are the slides. Woohoo! Yay! All right, on we go, Brian. We got to push through this. We got some excellent buzzwords. What you got there?
I like this one. I saw non-regrettable attrition. It's not just enough that you're doing layoffs, but that you're actually calling some of the people you're laying off non-regrettable attrition. I mean, it really just warms my heart when I see buzzwords like that. When it just makes people feel so special, so loved. And, we're going to talk HR today. And I just wonder how phrases like that go down when you're trying to build a culture of inclusivity and a climate of a great place to work when you use phrases like non-regrettable attrition. But anyway,
well, by the way, what do you think about adding another buzzword, semi-regrettable attrition? where you have some regrets, but not like really intense regrets. Anyway,
I won't tell you. I won't tell you where I heard this eons ago, but I heard this expression "pure," previously undetected recruiting error, and I always think about that. When you're cutting loose someone who just really wasn't cutting, things for the company.
One more quick one for Doug from Hyam Park. And by the way, speaking of pesky question specialist leaving their roles, we're going to have to do one for you, Mr. Park. As you fulfill your ambitions, which I'm sure you will, of getting into the product side, which you've announced on LinkedIn, but we'll save you for another time. For now, you say Doug has the writing skills of a great journalist and the deep market knowledge of an analyst, the best of both worlds, indeed. So, Brian, one more. It's a co-pilot, not an autopilot. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of I was interesting hearing a vendor try to explain why their AI tool didn't have, it was lacking, let's say, some capabilities for both workflow, but also for having the human in the middle. Anyway, their answer was just this glib comment. It's a co-pilot. I mean, come on, wake up. It's a co-pilot. It's not an autopilot. And I'm like, really?
I suppose this is the wrong time for me to say it's not a co-pilot either, because I did look up the definition of co-pilot, and the co-pilot has to be able to actually fly the plane. But anyhow, let's move on from that.
Mm-hmm.
We got to move fast, Brian. So I'm gonna have to blast through, which means I'm not going to be able to go in depth into my agentic AI research on this call. I'm so sorry. I know that you guys must be really crestfallen to hear that, but you will be able to check that out on Diginomica. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll write 35 pages worth of stuff on that.
Yeah, nothing to fear here. Nothing to fear. So anyway, this one was from John Belden at UpRedge, and I think he was pointing to a pretty interesting dynamic about moving your digital transformation forward while others freeze, and starting to see that market dynamic a little bit of quote-unquote frozen in place type of projects for a variety of reasons, including the impact of tariffs and such. Having said that, we haven't seen a huge impact of that yet on the major enterprise bellwether vendors, but we will see. We just did some review of that on Diginomica, but this is kind of early days. But anyway, the concept being like take advantage of these times where others are kind of doing the squirrel in the headlights routine. And I would add that to different buying dynamics too, where companies get afraid to buy because they're afraid that they're going to buy obsolete software given the changes in AI and stuff. And the whole point is like find ways to move ahead while others are flummoxed by the current conditions. So let's just move forward, Brian, because I don't think, unless you have something you really want to say there.
I was just going to say, we see this cyclically come up every time there's a big change in the tech market or the general economy. Okay, next story.
Right. So this is the agentic research. This is from about 2 weeks ago. I shifted from researching the issues with RAG and why that needs real-time evaluation to why agents need real-time evaluation. I won't get into all of this here, We may get back into it later in the show, but it has to do with the problems you can run into in so-called autonomous agent scenarios where you have the compound error effect, where even if you can get an agent up to 95% accuracy, that can be deeply troubling and deeply problematic on a lot of use cases. And so I put together my top 10 points for getting AI projects right on the agent side, but also really in depth on how to start auditing and evaluating the performance of these agents better. So there's really no way to get into this in a satisfactory manner right now. So you'll have to check the article. This one I want to spend a moment on, Brian. This came my way through Esteban Kolsky of Constellation, where Doug Henshin is also working now before he moves on. But anyway, Esteban's looking at how to gather curated intelligence for board members, and he's looking at how you can combine like the best of human intelligence with also some AI curated intelligence, and that's an interesting thing to track. So just follow him on LinkedIn. But Esteban picked out this article from the Harvard Business Review, and it's quite a fascinating look at, what happens when a board over a course of a year gives AI a chance to provide input. And I'm not going to go into all of the points here because I actually reviewed this a couple weeks ago in one of my hits and misses columns, and I had some criticisms of this project as well. But there's some pretty interesting things around what this meant to this board. And, there were obviously issues at times with some of the accuracy around the output that they were getting. But this particular scenario really played to the strengths of LLMs, being able to creatively distillate content, support brainstorming, summarization, and interaction. And I thought one of the really cool things was that large language models don't care about our feelings or organizational politics and assumptions. And so one of the ways that using these tools really helped this particular board is they really got some of their assumptions challenged in really interesting ways by the tool. Now, granted, you don't need AI for that, but I think that's really interesting as a way of thinking about this. And of course, the caveat is if you're going to do that, you have to be open to being challenged. So there's a culture aspect of that as well. So I thought this was a fascinating story worth a deeper look.
I actually liked the story, but more importantly, I liked how they had, if you will, boxed in certain useful areas where AI can help in the conversations and the discovery process. Think of it as AI will serve up a bunch of things that help you complete your understanding of like a business problem by telling you other things you ought to look at or consider, can help you figure out other things that may need to be added or included in a financial plan or budget forecast, whatever. So it was AI as a supplement, not a replacement.
Right. And just real quick too, just to point out that the raw use of ChatGPT type models for this didn't work. It required a human with quote unquote critical thinking skills to add the value to this that was needed. But anyhow, enough of that for now. I've written about that on Diginomica as well. Brian, we got to blast through your top stories so we get to Gene. So what do you want to talk about?
So a couple of these are actually, I think, setups to help our conversation with Gene. Not that it will need help. There were a couple of fascinating pieces just in the last week about how many fake job seekers are tricking recruiters, operational managers, and others in companies to get jobs. And the techniques are just phenomenal. The scariest part, though, is when you read about how nation states like North Korea are recruiting people locally in country in places like the United States, who basically, in some cases, inadvertently are acting as facilitators to help these people get jobs. So one of the things, and the good news is neither John or I use a green screen behind us, but a lot of job seekers do for interviews. And one of the things they noted is a lot of these people are using AI tools that have a delay in the response. But the smart recruiters are asking people to like turn your head to the side. And when you do, it'll momentarily expose some of the real background that the like Google Meet background is not going to be able to cover up for a moment. And that's when you can realize the person you're talking to doesn't even look like the one that's actually involved in this interview. And they've got like 7, 8 computer displays around them that are helping with people faking out the jobs. At the very bottom of the quote over there, it says, all these means by 2028, 1 in 4 job candidates will be fake. And that was from Gartner, I think. And when you read this story, it should scare the daylights out of you, because you realize resumes, applications, remote interviewing and everything else, it's all screwed up. And while I'm a big fan for remote work, when you read this article, you're thinking like, no, we need to get these people to show up sporadically to make sure they are the real human being that we thought we hired. The nation state stuff is just scary. Anyway, that's that story.
Got it. Real quick, Thomas, AI is a supplement. Do you think the majority of managers have understood that? The short answer is no, Thomas, they haven't. But if they read this article, they might understand it better. And it's also a very use case specific way of thinking. And that's how AI should be assessed, is by use case, not by generalities. Anyhow, Brian, we're going to move on. I'm going to save further commentary so you can do your stories. So here's your next one.
This one I just thought was really good from a not only a culture and employee engagement kind of angle, but it goes to the heart of some of the DEI squashing that's coming out of Washington, D.C. Marriott's CEO wanted to talk to his executive team about this. They had a big meeting offsite. They all went off for a week and pondered it, and then they came back, and basically what they concluded was Marriott hotels exist to serve any and all people all over the world. And they wanted their workforce to kind of reflect that as well. So basically, they took a strong stand. They will continue to do what they've always done. And as a result, you can see at the bottom there, the CEO got 40,000 emails from Marriott associates around the world in 24 hours. I thought call that my feel good story for the.
Honestly, it increases my chances of wanting to stay at a Marriott when I have a choice. Not necessarily because of DEI alone, but just simply because showing a little bit of friggin' backbone is appreciated in this day and age. I don't necessarily care if companies don't share the same values that I do, but it's nice to see when they can stick with them and stick with what their employees care about instead of blowing at whatever breeze they think is going to land them a project.
Yeah, and you and I know some software vendors who are notorious for not, for saying one thing and doing something else. They sell
Indeed.
applications, but they don't use that same technology to further like ESG or whatever kinds of goals. It's pretty sad out there.
We'll have to save that for a little bit later.
This story was about, and we've seen dozens of these, in the press, but this one it was one of the latest ones where a customer support AI tool just went wild. And, I know there was a TV show years back, Girls Gone Wild. We need one on AI Gone Wild. We could have we could probably have 15 episodes of it in the can by now. But you guys can read the deal here about where the guy offers at the end of this quote, the mess could have been avoided if they understood that AI makes mistakes. AI can't take responsibility for those mistakes. It falls on you, and users hate being tricked by a machine posing as human. Amen. I hate those AI-powered chat bots. And for some diabolical reason, I have the ability to get these things caught in an endless loop. They can't solve anything. They just keep coming.
Brian Summers' air travel doom loop. All right,
yes.
on to the next.
And I think this is the last of mine. This was just to point out that a lot of the climate technology that's out there, a lot of these projects, now, the article I thought was a bit misleading because the 8 billion they're talking about was actually made up of a small number of projects. So it sounds like a lot of individual projects, but actually it was a handful of them. But the problems, money
That's
doesn't
the
solve everything.
that's the sorry, that's for the listeners. That's the stylings of Jimmy Page on Ramble On playing through my window. Someone's like really happy it's Friday afternoon. Continue, Brian.
No, just it's an interesting article to read to kind of get a flavor for where and how the investment monies are moving around here on this climate technology. And again, we can talk more about these kind of things on a subsequent deal when we talk more about like ESG and those kind of initiatives.
Indeed.
But I think it's. Do we know if our guest has made it?
Our guest is here, Brian. Oh, was this was like supposed to wait until after the guest, right?
No.
Oh, is halftime pre-guest?
We can jump right into the halftime now. And Gene's there.
Do I have to play football now? Or did you want me to sing?
No,
Is this my Beyonce moment?
We're the halftime entertainment.
Oh my gosh.
So Gene, just so you know, John Reed actually knows a little bit about the space. He's written a couple of books on HR, and this one, of course, Resumes from Hell.
Resumes from Hell, man. Still selling on Amazon.com after all these years. Amazing.
And it's
I love it.
The only book I got from John where I have a personal autographed letter from John. Anyway.
I'll just share real quick.
So you feel special. Got it.
I'll just share real quick 2 quick highlights from the book because there's a lot of fun stuff in there. But 2 of my favorites offhand are references. One of them was a guy listed his mother because she supported a lot of my research. So I thought that was refreshing. And another one listed a colleague that had passed away as a reference.
Oh.
I only wish he was still with us. Anyway, that makes for creative reference checks that I think even AI couldn't handle. Gene, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, John. I am really looking forward to chatting with you and Brian. It's never dull. I've been listening in until I was brought on screen here, and you've already covered some fascinating topics. I especially just to stay with the whole fake job seekers for a moment. I'm sitting here laughing, thinking, so all the ATS vendors are probably seeing that as a volume issue that they need to address, as opposed to like actually addressing a cybersecurity issue. And by the way, my virtual background is from the Jersey Shore, and I am real. So I know you're getting a little breakthrough.
Cool. We might have to see like a side angle to make sure. But
yeah, there is an article I've read on 5 or 7 ways recruiters can stump an AI assisted job seeker, and doing things like hitting them with questions like, tell us the process on how you implemented the project, but do it in reverse. And that's something AI can't do. Is it can't do a listing backwards. The logic doesn't work that way. Anyway,
how would you deboard a candidate? Right.
How would I deboard a candidate?
I like that.
Oh, let's not go there.
Yeah. So Brian, sorry to cut out your intro. Let's go back to that.
So we ought to provide some context for the audience on who Gene is. Gene's someone I've known for more years than either one of us probably wants to admit. And I see Gene almost every single year at the HR Tech show in the press room. That for sure, but I will run into her at other things as well. And I know Gene's actually written a dossier on yours truly that she gives her PR clients on how to do an interview or what to do or what to look out for if you're going to get cross-examined by yours truly. And I actually got one CEO to share some of the tidbits out of that on your perspective of an interview with me. And honestly, I think you did a good read on me. You gave the CEO 2 pieces of advice, and one was never, ever try to second guess what the questions are going to be because you'll never anticipate them. And the second piece of advice was, and for God's sakes, don't lie to Brian. He'll find the shortest path to the truth and crucify you.
Exactly. And he'll never forget. He'll never forget.
No, I don't forget anything. Yeah.
We have known each other a long time. John, I was I was musing on this last night, and I was thinking it's got to be 25, maybe 26 years, maybe even longer than that, which is amazing since we're so young.
Yeah, I think I met you when I was about 4, and,
That's my
but
story, and I'm sticking with it.
yeah, but I was still
Okay.
a partner at Accenture when I was at that age, but anyway,
Yeah.
Okay, well, we will save the nostalgia for a little bit later. Folks in the chat, feel free to pop in questions for Gene because we choose our guests for a reason. So I'm sure this is going to be good. Gene, do you have any comments you wanted to make on any of the past stories that we covered to this point in the show?
Well, first of all, the whole DEI, climate tech, all of that, I liked the Marriott story as well. I'm not saying that, that's going to make me go to Marriott. What happens with me is it more repels. Like I haven't stepped in Target since they decided to, that DEI isn't in vogue anymore. I don't see how you can abandon your values if they were truly your values. So all that virtue signaling kind of nauseates me. So I think that's an important point. And in my little world, I'm the chair of the Women in HR Tech Summit at the HR Technology Conference. And a lot of the conversations I'm having this year are around the please don't put the DEI acronym in my session description because we're a federal contractor and that's going to trigger some sort of corporate comms person having, a panic attack. So we are operating in very unusual times, but to the point that you saw in that Marriott story, 40,000 employees contacted the guy and said, "Thank you." It's all about what the people want, and candidates still expect an inclusive workplace. That's what they're drawn to, and employees don't want to be made uncomfortable. You're operating at a time where Gallup says, in fact, I'll read you what Gallup says. Global employee engagement has fallen by 2 additional percentage points in last year, costing the world economy $438 billion in lost productivity. So, working backwards to make sure your employees don't wanna be there, seems counterproductive to me, and certainly in the HR tech category, we have plenty of solutions to that problem.
Well, Gene, let me tell you what I'm rooting for. You tell me what you think of this. I don't necessarily expect every company to step out there the way Marriott did in this type of environment. But what I would like to see is I firmly believe that more diverse, inclusive workplaces are ultimately more effective workplaces as well. I think they outperform. And so I'd like to see companies quietly go about the business of doing that if they know that it works. And I define diversity very broadly. I'm not legalistic around it, but I include everything from age to
Mhm.
neurodivergence to physical impairments, whatever you want
Fact.
to call it. Like the idea being that if we can be more flexible on talent, where the talent lives, who they are, how they identify with, we're going to get better talent than everyone else who is obsessed with return to office and fulfilling certain mandates and coloring within the lines of the current
Mhm.
rules. So that's
Yeah.
my hope is that the companies that do that will quietly go about the business of prevailing in the market, and that's what I'd like to see.
I'm curious, John, you've used the word quietly twice. Why quietly? Is this not something you think we should be loud
Not
and proud
necess
about?
No, I mean, if they wanna speak out, that's fine, but I as long as they stick to their guns, that's what I care about. You know,
Exactly, I
I d
agree. I
the PR festival, I guess, is I could give or take because a lot of times the loudest companies I find don't back things up as much as they should, so that's kinda why I was using that word because 'cause I'm a little sensitive to PR bombast. Maybe it's my maybe it's the AI hangover that I'm
I've
constantly
noticed
trying to get
this
over.
about you, John. I have
Um,
noticed this about you.
so maybe that's part of it. I don't really have a problem with vocalizing values at all. It's just I'm much more a fan of living your beliefs and showing them
Yes.
by your actions. So I just that's the only reason I think I said that. But it's a good point. And good point
I
by you.
Listen, and I think, while we're on the topic, I have to mention that PR is a much maligned category. There's a lot of focus on what we say. What people don't realize is there's a lot we don't say. There are different ways that we communicate. So not everything is a press release, for example. Sometimes it's a whisper campaign. Sometimes it's put a lid on it and don't, make sure it never sees the light of day. So I don't know, as your guests are joining today, what their expectation or experience has been with PR.
Right. Hey, Brian, we forgot to show the cool slide with the cool pics of Gene.
Uh-oh.
That was
Oh,
my bad.
no.
Gene, you ready for the
Oh,
cool pics?
I was not in the band.
Check those out.
Okay,
Yeah, that.
so
Yeah, and Gene's company, Devon, has been kind of the agency of record for, I know, over 100, probably 200, I don't know, vendors over the years. Most of them in HR tech or related, adjacent spaces. Um, Certainly, pretty much everybody, you can't swing a dead cat down at the HR tech show and not hit somebody who doesn't know Gene personally. So she's got a Rolodex that's, this big. I hope it's digital by now. But anyway.
Wait till she trains AI on that, Brian.
so,
By the way,
speaking of AI, the image on the left is AI generated. The image on the right is a real, it's
Well,
photography. I have to disclose that. I feel compelled to do that.
I killed a slide I was going to use here instead. When I typed your name in on, I don't know, DuckDuckGo or something like that, and it started bringing up images of you, but the picture would be like Stacey Harris or you.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of, you might have been there in the
Yes.
whatever,
I'm
but
tagged. I'm tagged in a lot of situations.
yeah, you're tagged all over the place, and if somebody's not careful, they don't know which gene they're getting. Well, apparently now we know that the one on the left has been
Has been
digitally
altered.
enhanced or
Has
whatever.
been
Yeah.
altered. Absolutely. Brian, I've been doing, you mentioned HR tech, but we are a tech agency at our heart of hearts. So, and I've been doing this 31 years. And, one of our first assignments was to launch IBM middleware. So we have been, here, there, and everywhere from every possible angle that you can imagine. And even today, of course, clients not just in HR tech, but ag tech and fintech and retail tech and you name it. I see we have a question, John. I don't know what our process is here.
yeah, so our process is to interrupt our conversation to answer the questions. The theory is always that the viewers are probably smarter than we are. Thomas asks, why do missing values or values that are only sound bites and not lived need tech solutions? It's interesting, Thomas, you're always going to push us. So what do you make of that?
I think that's interesting. A lot of the products that I'm involved in, certainly pre go to market and then to track their success or lack thereof after the fact, are employee communication solutions. So, to a lot of organizations, this looks like a problem that needs to be automated, and they're convinced that it needs to be some sort of regular cadence in a regular format or in an omni-channel type of scenario. So, I think that's where some of it comes from. Now, the reality is, the research will show you that most employees, their experience with the company, it pretty much consists of their interaction with their manager and their team. A lot of employees aren't looking up at the CEO or the leadership team, especially if you're in a large enterprise. That's just not the experience they're having.
Brian, that gets us to your bad manager problem, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would argue that the bulk of the technologies out there right now are they view that the lowest level employee is the problem when it comes to engagement and culture. And the tools are never turned around really and focused much on, can we identify who the psychopath managers and bosses are? Can we do something to get rid of them? so that we can make this company actually have a chance of living its values. We all know that the main reason people leave a company like 50, 60% of the time is because of their boss.
Mhm.
And that's, to me, the first place where the rubber hits the road on these bad engagement deals is get rid of these nut jobs who were never really trained how to build great teams. I remember early in my career, I had a 96-person project team that was going to work for 2.5 years building a custom system. How about that? That was my baby. And I realized at about 11 or 12 months in that we were going to make it. I knew it was going to work. And yet I thought about, but will the team make it all the way to the bitter end? And I knew I couldn't just be someone who drove the team based on due dates, deliverables, everything else. I had to kind of build in some flexibility and let some humanity come in the door. And I'm pleased to say everybody made it to the end of that project 2.5 years later. And we had a raging success with that project. But it took a while. I had to realize that whatever methods I'd used in the past on short term projects just weren't going to work on something of scale. And yes, so John's right. This is a question of a lot of the engagement and culture kind of questions and values. It does start at the top and it requires reinforcement. What we don't need are these little bullshit tools that give out automated attaboys.
Nudges. That's one of my favorite.
But
It's like,
Brian, why don't we gamify our dystopian work experience with badges and emojis? Come on, man.
yes, please.
And let's call it
Please.
well-being software. How about that?
Yes, another one of my favorites.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Brian, I'm thinking you and me, badmanager.ai. Let's turn the pattern matching abilities of AI onto these managers because these idiots are going to stand out by the pattern of their misbehavior. And I think all kinds of budget holders are going to love having the AI mirror reflected back on themselves in that manner. What do you think? I think we're going to get hits, man.
I think in a week I could probably have 100 case studies for badmanager.com.
.ai.
.ai. Yeah.
So this is a fun point in the show, and viewers, please feel free to keep your questions flowing. Gene, Brian's going to put you on the spot with some hot topic stories, and you're going to have to provide instant commentary. You ready?
I'll do my best.
Okay, here we go. Brian.
So this article is kind of interesting from LinkedIn. Resume-based hiring, they're saying AI, is supposed to going to help in all this. But I thought, that we've got the article I thought didn't really help a whole lot. But I have been saying this for a while that resumes, as well as the traditional job interview and everything else, are definitely showing their long in the tooth kind of attributes. They're not working, and they're not going to work because the way AI tools and other stuff screw them up. But this middle paragraph in here is critical when they talk about you need to prioritize the culture ad when you welcome diverse people and perspectives into your organization and build stronger, adaptable organizations, as opposed to what is the culture fit. So instead of trying to find people that fit the culture you're looking for, look at ways to broaden it out. And I thought that was the best part of that story. That was my reaction. What do you think, Gene?
Yeah, so I agree. Listen, this whole discussion around resumes, that's a single-threaded issue that has come up for as long as I can remember. Going way back. And we've walked around it a number of different ways. So, do we have structured interviews? Do we look at keyword search? I mean, like this conversation's been going. I'm so sorry, Brian. I didn't mean to hurt your head. But I mean, this conversation's been going on forever. Swimming back though to what we were talking about previously, if you don't fix the culture, the leadership team, if you don't fix the self-awareness of the company. I mean, I sit on calls every week where conversations go still in this day and age. And I can remember years ago sitting through management training where we were told, never say this, But, we will have conversations about, well, this isn't working. Yeah, but that's the way we do it here. That's the way we do it. So it's not the outcomes aren't important. What's important is to embrace the way we do it, even if it is highly dysfunctional. So some of these situations are so cyclical they can never get out of their own way. Resumes, who's coming up with what we're replacing it with? I mean, we've surrounded it. We do now have structured interviews. We now have more assessment tests than you can possibly imagine. But again, what are we doing to fix culture and to fix leadership? And what are we doing to train managers so that they don't ask stupid questions that alienate qualified job candidates? Sorry to play Socrates and start asking questions back to your
Mm.
questions.
I don't know, Gene. I can solve a lot of problems for clients, but I can't fix stupid. And, that's
I think we have
my
that in the
limitation.
dossier about you, Brian.
Thomas is bearing down on culture. Do culture add and fit into culture contradict each other?
I would argue they do.
I would agree.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. You
So what's
can't move forward if you keep going in circles.
so what's our next article, John?
Oh, yes, we got some more. This is like a it's like a monster slide, Brian. Help us through this one.
So going from right to left, I think these were the order these stories kind of broke. On the far left, Deal, a global payroll kind of provider deal, sued, um, excuse me,
So
tried
rippling,
to
yeah,
cultivate a
yeah,
spy,
yeah.
and Rippling, one of their competitors, was on the receiving end of that activity. Then in the middle story, we find out that Deal wants to go ahead and prepare for an IPO. And on the far right, one of the most amazing reads is the person in the middle of the espionage story apparently had fled to Abu Dhabi briefly and then testified and kind of spilled his guts on how the whole thing, the spy deal kind of unfolded. That's the super, super short, version of this. But I'm dying to find out, what does Gene Achille think of this? And were any of these companies your clients? That's what I want to know.
Well, okay. So we do not represent Deal, nor do we represent Rippling. However, we represent competitive organizations. We also know a lot about the cultures of these organizations and their history. I think it's really important to remember especially in HR technology, where somehow people always expect that because it's HR that we should be held to a different level of a code of honor, uh, that nothing is secret anywhere, and that corporate spies exist everywhere. In fact, I would argue that I'm kind of surprised that we don't see more of these types of stories. I did find it rather entertaining that the spy locked himself in the bathroom of wherever he was because he was going to be served by a process server. This is messy. This is messy. I have done in my career a number of IPOs, and you need to work with the SEC on explaining a lot of things, even things that were seemingly benign, like, a press release for an executive who joined and then left 90 days later. I think this particular situation is going to be hard to explain. I think Deal's going to have their work cut out for them. So it's a great story. I wish that we still had, what was that television show, Silicon Valley, where they talked about Pied Piper was the fictitious ISP. We need to reboot that and have something like this going on, and maybe an AI overlay.
Hey, Thomas, just want to flag your continuing discomfort with the culture add and fit into culture discussion. I'll get back to that at the end of the show. I want to hit a couple other topics I'm a little worried that could be a rabbit hole. In the meantime, if you could elaborate on your point of view in the chat, that would be helpful. Uh, so
So,
go ahead, Brian.
so Gene, on that Rippling deal, there was even another story that just came out about the payments firm Revolut
Mhm.
has, which I know that's a Diginomics a customer of Revolut or payments. Anyway, they're now being drug into the mess. And I think your point about the SEC is going to have some interesting questions. Yeah, when preparing for an IPO is almost like a proctology exam. They're going to go
It is
examine
indeed.
everything.
It is indeed. You're right.
And when you read these stories, it's going to be difficult for both parties involved. Are going to have to provide answers, particularly when attorneys are going to tell them not to say anything because there is like pending litigation or the kind of proceedings going on. By the way, in the spirit of full disclosure, I've been involved in 2 giant expert witness gigs involving spies. So it does happen with some frequency in the tech space.
Yes.
And when it gets discovered, oh man, it gets ugly quick.
Hyan is
You
setting
know,
it up. Hyan's saying that
I
Silicon
said,
Valley was a documentary.
yes, indeed.
Uh, yeah.
We just need to bring Ken Burns into it next time, okay, guys?
By the way, Idiocracy was a documentary also, I'm sorry to say.
you
But
know,
that's a bit of an aside.
John, I just building on Brian's point though that I think is getting lost in all this is here at Devon, of course, we're focused on PR and marketing. Or is looking at the audience for these products. You're talking about a buyer who values trust and transparency, and all this stuff makes them incredibly uncomfortable. So no one wants to go to their boss and champion this kind of stuff. The minute their boss hits Google, this is all right at the top. So yeah, I don't see an IPO in the near future for Deal, but maybe they'll prove me wrong.
That's a perfect transition, actually, Brian, if you don't mind me making it. Are you set there?
Go
I really want to
transition.
get some tech vendor pros and cons, do's and don'ts out of Gene before we run out of time. I have some pretty strong views that a lot of tech vendors, including HR tech vendors, are really screwing up their AI messaging, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But before that, Gene, just on a broader view, what would you grade HR tech vendors right now in terms of how they're doing with their messaging, and where are they getting it? Let's start with how they're getting it wrong first. Where are they screwing up?
So one thing that's pervasive in this particular category is what I call bumper car marketing. And so they spend a great deal of time focusing on what the competition is doing and then essentially repeating it. So from an external communication standpoint, it's like, hey, ABC put this press release out on Monday. So on Wednesday, we have to get out and say the exact same thing. So that's one thing, and Brian is smiling. I mean, like the media and the analysts. I know both of you are just bombarded with these kind of vacuous messages. And the other thing we see, even to this day, which is kind of scary, is press releases as product design documents. That there's nothing there yet, nothing there to see yet. So we still see that happening on the product side. So I see a lot of AI manifestos right now. I don't see something that could be that maps to a line item on a budget somewhere. So we're not there yet.
At 2 years ago at HR Tech, one woman came into the press room and she's got a 30-minute window, to sit down with me. She burned through 20 to 25 minutes of it trying to convince me that they've got this great technology platform. And I go, there's 500 vendors down the expo hall.
Yes.
400 of them have a platform. And you want to waste your time telling me about a platform. Let's talk about something else. Anyway, she just burned all the way through it and couldn't imagine why she got nothing from me, in neither coverage or anything else. because I'm not hearing anything from her that I haven't heard hundreds of times before. That was 2 years ago. Last year, everybody was talking about generative AI. This year, everyone wants to talk about agentic AI.
Agentic AI, yes.
And all these vendors sound like broken records when it comes to the messaging they get out. So,
Yeah,
if
it's
your
frustrating.
clients don't believe you when you make that point, tell them to call John or I. We'll be happy to feed some sense
Well,
into them.
they're afraid of you, Brian, so let's just put that out there. I mean,
Cool.
I'm
we
actually a
only
nice guy. I don't know
we
why.
only bring you in when we know that they're not gonna cry immediately. So, listen, critical thinking skills, that's a lost art, and,
Hey,
oh,
Brent.
oh, I
You're blaming
you're
LinkedIn.
blaming
Okay,
LinkedIn for what? Okay.
to fix their
Well,
notification
that's
system.
because he
Nice.
spelled it.
Oh,
You see, he
okay.
spelled it linked with extra E's in it. That's another problem there.
Hey, Brent, you know that I've crashed some of LinkedIn's like video for influencers shows and they tried to expose like the problems and it's always a real shit show when I do that, but it's funny. Anyhow, sorry, Gene. Just wanted to bring Brent in the conversation. Hi, Brent. I know you probably have a show in 9 minutes. Everyone go to Brent's show afterwards if you want to detox from this. Hey, can I just can I just quickly, while I'm hogging the mic, just say a couple things that really bother me? I want to talk about AI specifically because I think the trust issue around messaging applies triple to AI for a variety of reasons. So I think the trust angle is so important. And yet I hear too many vendors talk about, first of all, there's way too much autonomous mechanistic talk that may sound good to investors and board, but don't sound good to the employees who actually need to adopt your software in order to have any success in the market. So that bothers me a lot. The second is in HR where all kinds of use cases with incredibly different risk profiles are lumped in together. So how can we talk about job description generation, succession, and talent recruitment in the same sentence? Like it doesn't make any sense. In the EU AI Act, those things have very different status within a regulatory framework that last I checked, companies doing global business have to abide by. So that really bothers me quite a bit. And I think I have even another one, but I can't even remember it because I'm so hot and bothered about the other ones. So
Yeah.
anyway, so that's my thing is like I think that so much of this is about the gap between where customers are at and where vendors are at. Now they moved on to agentic. And I just wrote about an event where one of the vendors, Workday, the one who spent a lot of time on a particular vendor, they did, to their credit, talk about why they're shifting that dialogue and what that means. But customers don't know, for the most part, why we suddenly shifted from generative, which was supposedly really cool and awesome, to now agents are cool and awesome, but generative's kind of like last year. So in my mind, there's just a huge gap there. And I think more authentic, thoughtful messaging could help to close that gap, but I don't see much of it.
Well, I think part of the problem is also that, you're very sophisticated as it relates to AI. A lot of these companies are not. The vendor community is not. The buyer is not. It's very early, very nascent for them. And so everyone's talking about these things like as if they really know what they're talking about, but they don't have the talent on staff to back it up. They don't know where it's going to take them. They have these like last minute epiphany moments about ethics and integrity, and I mean, yes, you do have to bring Brian the
We'll get
Dr.
back to
Pepper.
that
We
in a
know that.
second. We'll get back to that in a moment.
See, I can solve the Dr. Pepper situation. I can't solve, vendors going wild, throwing buzzwords out there. Brian's point about platform. I've been involved in so many arguments about the platform issue.
But
Yeah.
let me stop you for a sec though,
Mhm.
because I do think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I do think that if vendors treated folks like you like a trusted advisor instead of an instrument to inflict propaganda on people like Brian and I, it would go so much better for them. Because so often vendors don't treat folks like you like the experts that you are in getting this right, where then you have the opportunity to say, hey, hold on a sec. Like, John's never going to buy this AI generated bullshit press release. Like, there's a different way to approach this, or the market, your customers are in a different place than you. Like,
Right,
if they
exactly.
treat you as a true advisor, then can't some of these problems get solved?
Well, and so you've just brought me to one of my favorite conversations, and that is, we at the Devon Group are at a different point in our journey, and we don't take on clients who aren't going to respect counsel. And yeah, I meet them all the time. I talk to them all the time. In any given week, we talk to people like that, and we thank them very much for their time. We try to be as gracious as possible, but they're not a fit. They're not a fit because they're not going to be successful if they're just looking to us as a conduit to reach our very valued, highly curated relationships. Uh, that's the equity that's at the core of our business, and I'm not. I it's not. You can't even pay me for that. It's got to be the right fit, or it's not at all. So yeah, we're in a different place than a lot of PR agencies. It's also one of the things our team resists being categorized, as purely a PR agency. When I was on the client side of the business, of course, I sat across from agencies, and the leadership team would come in, they'd sell the deal, and then I'd be talking to somebody who was 24 for the next 90 days who didn't know, a CEO from a CTO, and the relationship was a disaster. We're at the other end of the spectrum. So, as Brian knows, like I'll argue a point to death with you, which is why he and I have gotten along so so well over the years. But it's a respect. It's got to be there. If you're not going to respect the subject matter expertise and the value of our network in terms of the feedback we're getting on a continual basis, then we can't do business.
Oh, I love this
Brian
comment.
says, as an
That's right.
analyst, I've heard that every
They're all the
product is the best.
And
500
leading.
vendors a year are all the
Right.
best. Right. They're
And they're
all
leading. They're all
Right.
leading.
Right.
They're
I
all
think that-
leading in their
Oh,
category.
and if they're missing something, 100% it's on the roadmap. 100 friggin' percent it's on the roadmap.
The minute
It's-
you mention
those
it
roadmaps
is
are
when it
incredible,
goes on
man.
that roadmap. Yes.
Absolutely incredible roadmaps. Hats off to all the roadmaps out there. I mean, just amazing friggin' roadmaps. Brian, comment.
Well, I'm still chuckling over our good friend Mr. Park's comment. But I would agree. One of the things, Gene, if you could tell your clients right now, I really don't want to hear any more stories about agentic. I don't even want to hear that. What I want to hear is I want to hear real, honest to God value or ROI that these tools actually delivered for somebody. Because everyone's talking about the promise of this stuff. And we all know that, between the hallucinations and the other stuff gone rogue, that the ROI just really isn't there. And that's the thing that the clients and customers are really struggling with is show me the money. And they're not seeing it because a lot of this stuff is still too nascent, uninstalled, whatever. Oh,
And Brent is saying when you ask them about pricing, they also say the same thing. Yeah, indeed.
Listen, I had a really refreshing conversation with a client the other day who was like, yeah, this particular application doesn't need agentic. It just needs machine learning. And I was like, oh no, you said machine learning. We're not supposed to say machine learning anymore. But it was refreshing. It was refreshing to have that type of discernment.
God forbid you saw the problem with a tool that doesn't ramp up
That
energy,
isn't fuzzy.
ramp up energy consumption to a degree where you can't possibly have a cost benefit that actually works. And wow,
Yes.
we actually solved it with the tool that actually did the job. I mean, this is, Gene, what are we going to do with you?
Absolutely.
I'm waiting for John to whip out an abacus or a spreadsheet now, with that last little comment.
Oh my gosh, the computing costs are enormous. I just had this very same conversation with someone who was like, "Really?" Because in HR, that's not what they're thinking about. Like they're not factoring in all the tangential costs.
All right, so we're on the home stretch, but I want to circle briefly back to Thomas's sort of poking the bear a bit on our culture conversation. Thomas said, he elaborated, every company needs a culture. Culture, in order to help the company grow, needs to have a chance to evolve. For that, it sometimes needs a fresh seed. This I would refer to as culture add. Of course, there needs to be enough of an overlap. We can't have a full conversation about that, but do you have a brief comment, Jean?
I think this is very interesting, but I think with each person who comes into the organization, aren't they the culture add? Shouldn't you be looking at them as a culture add? But going back to a point made earlier, so many companies have such poorly defined cultures. How would you know what you're adding or not? So I don't know. It seems like a longer conversation.
Indeed. So, Thomas, that's the best we can do for today, but hopefully we can revisit this key topic. Jason points out that conference season is upon us. Jason, you're so right. My travel itinerary looks really awesome. And huge opportunities to elevate customer success stories versus more vendor roadmaps. Indeed. In fact, one of the core precepts I have for this conference season is find a balance on the keynote stage between what's next and what's actually making a difference in customers' lives now. Because enterprise software is actually pretty good as it is. It doesn't need a lot of new stuff to actually deliver if you actually implement it properly. My favorite all-time example from last year was a vendor that spent so much time on stage on generative AI, and I rolled off the stage and talked to a mature robotics customer that had transformed their manufacturing environment in a really impressive way. And I pulled the vendor aside later and I was like, there's no room on your keynote stage for a mature robotics customer that's doing something really cool and solving problems with talent and labor. And, it was all working well. And I was like, why did we talk about generative AI for an hour? And so that balance, I think, is going to be really important. And so far, vendors have really not gotten it right.
Not getting it right is an understatement.
Thomas says, thank you. Yeah. Getting it very wrong. Except Brian, when they bring you a Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
That's the one thing that some vendors have figured out. They can actually maybe push a tough question off for like an hour if that stuff is ice cold, man.
Yes. Oh, and you and I both know that I'm not trying to ding Marriott here, but they don't carry Dr. Pepper. So if the event's at a Marriott property, I've got to go across the street to like the 7-Eleven or something like that to get a real beverage.
All right. Noted. We're adding that to the dossier that we've got to.
Wow. You're really conflicted about Marriott then. That's interesting.
Well, Mandalay Bay doesn't carry it either.
I know.
But you can go across the Las Vegas Boulevard to this it's not a Gulf station, but it's some gas station.
Bodega someplace, right?
Yeah, they've got it there.
By the way, Jason, nice to see you in the show. Signal versus noise. I'm gonna take it that we strive for signal in this environment. So hopefully we kept the noise down for you. We have one or two more slides. Gene, why don't you just stay with us for these? Because we're on the home stretch. Brian, check out this whiff of the month.
Gene, you may not know this, but we always like to find like something really stupid out there, and
it's tough competition these days too. There's a lot of contenders for this one this month, Brian, but this was the winner.
Yeah,
is this for real? Is this for real?
Yep.
Yes,
it's a real company. Yep.
Okay, that's really bad.
So I'm both offended by it.
Yeah, I'm extremely offended by it.
But the whole idea that you can't even pick up the phone to call your older, aging, whatever parent just seems so bad. Anyway,
but you can do it.
Your firm to get a new client here, Gene. But anyway,
you can do it though because the AI will do it for you, Brian. You left that part out.
Yeah, and it's going to stimulate their mind.
It will be a reasonable facsimile of your voice.
This is depressing. This is depressing. I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm sure InTouch has a great ramp-up opportunity if anyone in the chat wants to stay in closer touch with their relatives, but actually does not have time. Oh, Jason's seeing a 404 on the URL.
Yeah, and that's actually legit, Jason.
Is that
You can,
legit? Yeah.
yeah, you can. That outfit is 404 Media, and you can actually
Oh,
pull
yeah,
that
yeah,
link
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
go.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
yeah,
pull
yeah,
that
yeah.
link and go to it.
Oh, I thought you actually went to the URL itself. No, 404 Media is I highly recommend them. A subscriber-based, independent journalism for the
Mhm.
tech world on the consumer side. But anyhow, yeah, they surface this keeper. And, yeah, I'm sure they have a ramp-up discount available if you want to start sending
Like
warm
Gene was writing
AI-generated
down that.
calls.
It looked like Gene was writing down that URL. Is there
I
some elder parent
was.
you want
I
to
was.
use the service for?
No, but I wanna spread this because this is a great example of what not to do. So, absolutely.
Yeah, this is pretty high on my list of, like, bad AI startup
Yeah.
ideas, although number 1 remains the AI-generated, mushroom evaluator to tell you which mushrooms to eat and which ones not to. That's gonna be number 1 for a long time. But
I still like the one where these guys at a car dealership got an AI tool to help people pick the perfect vehicle to buy, and it kept recommending Ford pickups being sold across the street at a competitor's.
This sounds
That
like Deal
it
and
was
Rippling to me.
that was solid stuff there, absolutely solid. Well, I don't think we have anything else on that, John.
no,
Yeah,
we're on the home stretch. Audience, we're on the final leg. If you need anything more from us, salty comments, now's the time. By the way, Thomas says thanks for the culture answer there at the end. So, and thank you, Thomas, for pushing the chat in new directions. Always appreciate it. So, what's something that inspires and creates value, Brian?
I think we all ought to go over to Brent's deal and just start carpet bombing his comment feed with a bunch of inane comments and see if we can make him bust out laughing in the middle of his own podcast. Um,
That's a
anyway,
very generous definition of inspired and create value, but I like it. Uh,
I didn't say it was any good. I just
oh
that
yeah,
was a
that'd be
suggestion.
fun. Yeah, absolutely. Brent's 5 o'clock Friday show is always a good vent. So
So,
definitely
Gene,
check that
is
out.
there a vendor you're aware of that we ought to be looking at that maybe has missed our radar screen in the HR space?
Oh my goodness, Brian. I have a list of people for you, so I'm gonna take that offline. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting people you should be looking at. Absolutely. This remains a very vendor dense category, as you know.
Well, let's put Gene on the spot. What inspires you and creates value in your world?
Not having to deal with me. Anyway.
We have had our moments, however. No, seriously. You know what, John? I love to do great work. And so when I'm allowed to do great work, I'm so happy. When I can't do great work, I don't want to engage anymore. You know, you get to a certain point in your career and you're like, nah, you know what? There isn't enough money in the world to pay me for this. So yeah, that's where I'd say that's where inspiration lies when the right pieces are in place.
Indeed. Took me a while to realize that.
Yeah, that's a life lesson too. Absolutely.
I'm a broken record, but what inspires me is exactly this type of conversation. So that's why we did this, Brian. And every time we do it, it makes feel like it's worth doing. So thanks to all for that. What about you, Brian? Can you close us out? You got anything for us?
I wish I had something really pithy and great, but my mind is just full of the plane I got to crawl on tomorrow to head across the other side of the planet.
Yeah, I'm not sure a 12-hour flight inspires and creates value.
Ooh.
It's more than that because I get a stopover in Dallas and another one in Doha. You know, you just don't get a lot of direct flights out of Indianapolis. Every trip for me starts with me getting on my hands and knees and crawling into an Embraer 175 to then go to another airport to get on a real plane to start the journey to go someplace. And which is why when your clients are thinking of having an analyst event, Gene,
Mm.
please, for God's sakes, tell them we don't ever want to go to Orlando ever
Oh,
again.
I hear
Uh,
you. I hear you. We need to pick better venues.
Well, and we also need, and while I personally love events that are in places that are kind of interesting that I don't go to 10 to 15 times a year, like Vegas. I also don't need one that takes 3, 4 plane, transfers to get to it. That's kind of
What do you mean, Brian? We're going to relax in the confines of Anchorage, Alaska. It's going to be great. Anyhow, Brian, something that inspires and creates value. You completely violated the rules of that segment. So we're going to give you one more chance, then we're going to end the show. Tell the peeps what you're going to tell your audience in Singapore.
So I'm going to talk. This talk is intended to scare the living daylights out of HR professionals. And I'm going to talk about 5 things that ought to be giving them nightmares. I'm going to have a more positive spin on it, Gene. But I'm going to talk about like all these fake people that are coming into the system and how state-run governments are getting their people digitally hired into firms and stealing trade secrets and everything else. That's pretty cool. I'll talk about what we think of as far as what HR's responsibilities are going forward have to involve a lot of new planning of work and what that is. And I don't see anybody doing anything materially on that right now. I know they talk a lot about doing it, but actually getting that done. There are a number of different kinds of, what else I have? I didn't think you were going to ask me that, John. Let me look at, I'll cheat here.
Brian, man, it's a live show, man. You got to be ready.
Gotta be ready here, Brian.
We have no net here, man.
We can talk about street food in Singapore. I mean, we have a little filler here.
Michael, sorry you missed most of the detox, but I'm glad you got to hear a bit of sanity. Part of the vision of this show is to make people feel a little saner and a little more chill. So hopefully we accomplish that. If not, check it next time, and the replay will run on YouTube and LinkedIn. Brian, any final things from your talk?
Okay, so I think how HR is going to buy software, how they design workflows, and how they run different processes in the operational end of the business, not just HR, is something HR's got to really get in front of right now. They need to develop countermeasures for citizen AI tools that are screwing up HR processes left and right. And if they're not even thinking about that, they're probably being troubled with it. I think that HR has to be in the management business of agents, algorithms, and all that kind of stuff. Somebody has to manage and maintain these things, and they just can't ignore and not do anything about it. We talked about they've got to lead the radical reshaping of work. And I also think that the next generation workforce that's out there is really going to challenge them. And I'm giving them a piece of homework about an article that talks about what do you do with people who won't look up from their phone the entire time they're in like a management meeting? I mean, how do you motivate people who can't get out of their smartphone? And that's just one of the issues that that have to be dealt with to get any productivity out of this next generation of folks coming up through the school systems today. So that's a teaser for that.
Well, thank you for that. Michael wants to know where we see AI in the HR org chart. Michael, you got to come a little bit early in the show if you're going to ask questions like that.
It's job description specific.
If you're going to have to ask, but there's a great discussion to be had around whether agents are digital employees or not. I happen to think they are not, and they should be managed by IT like any other technology. But we really don't have the ability to have a satisfying conversation on this because there's just too much. There's too much nuance to this question to really do it justice at this moment in time. But if you check out Diginomica and check out Brian's archives, you can get some good views on this that he's already written. So I would start there. But Michael, sorry to give you short shrift, but we are 1 hour and 15 minutes into the show, and I think we've reached diminishing returns in terms of our intellectual capabilities. So Wishing you all the best. Thanks for great audience questions. Much appreciated. And we'll catch you again soon. Thanks, Gene and Brian.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.